Let's do it the Photoshop way and then the Oniric way. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reality Reimagined. I'm an award-winning photographer and Photoshop artist that specializes in fantasy composite art. I recently launched a series of custom brushes for Adobe Photoshop that will help you create light flares and stylized glow auras and shapes for your artwork. These brushes have a variety of uses as accents to a subject, special effects, and so on. Adding the glow and the color to the brushes has just gotten a whole lot better with the use of Oniric by Composite Nation. If you haven't yet heard of Oniric, it's a new powerful plugin for Adobe Photoshop that is a non-destructive glow generator, and it can create some truly amazing effects. Oniric can utilize the light data in your image and generate the effects. However, it can be utilized with my custom brushes to give them a color and light that goes way beyond the standard way that I would create it in Photoshop. So today, I'm going to give you a demonstration of the brushes, showing you how to create the light flares and add color to them just using Photoshop. Then I will show you how Oniric handles the brushes and let you be the judge of which one gets the job done. Before we head up to Photoshop, I would like to tell you a magic number. 42. That's right, 42. I am just 42 subscribers away from hitting the big 1,000 and reaching my first goal for this channel. If you like the content you find here today, I humbly ask you to give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. New education debuts each week in photography and Photoshop education, and when you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of that new content when you return to YouTube. Your support means more to me than a trip to Buffalo Wild Wings. So with that tasty thought, let's go to the Photoshops. Really want chicken wings. To get us started, let's make an introduction. This is Savannah, and you can see more of her amazing work by visiting her Instagram account at the link below. And in the description on this YouTube video, there are two important websites. First and foremost is compositenation.com. That is the main website of Oniric. I highly recommend that you visit that website. Check out the different tutorials and information that they have there on Oniric, and then you can pick up your copy of Oniric. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. It is an amazing program. I absolutely love using it in all of my artwork. The second website in the description is to realityreimagined.com. That is my website where you can pick up the copy of the brushes that we're going to be seeing today. Now, when you go to my website, there are three icons. One icon says light flares, one says glow auras, and one says light flares and glow auras. That third one is a combo pack of all the brushes, and it has a different price point. So if you're just interested in the light flares, you can get those. The glow auras, you can get those separately, or you can just buy all of them by buying the combo pack, which is a little bit cheaper. So go to compositenation.com, check out Oniric. There's also tutorials on this channel showing you a little bit about Oniric, and there will be continued tutorials coming to the channel about Oniric. And then go to realityreimagined.com if you want to and pick up the different brushes. So with all of that, let's get started. I'm going to make two new blank layers, and on layer number one, I'm going to fill it with the color black by hitting Alt Option and the backspace key. My foreground color, by the way, was black. So the reason why I did this is because I'm going to be stamping the brushes on this blank layer, and I'm going to be painting with the color white. So my foreground color now is white. I did the black layer because it will help us to see the brush and the overall effects. This is true for creating the effects just using Photoshop as well as using Oniric. So let's go to the brushes. This folder is called the Light Flares and Glow Auras Edition number 1. And this is the combo pack of all the different brushes. The brushes that you see at the top, these are the different glow auras, and they make some wonderful, interesting shapes. So like, let's stamp here. These are different lines that are a hard edge. We also have some soft edge versions of these brushes. Let's look at another one. Here, the triangle. I love using the triangle. And we stamp and paint, and you get this different triangle. So as we add glows and colors to this, it makes some very stylized, interesting effects that you can put into the background. It's just like a background graphic, or you can start utilizing it in various ways as special effects and so forth. So let's go to the light flares, which are down here. And these are just random different shapes that when you use motion blurs and so forth, you're able to create the light flares and streaks. Inside of Oniric, it pretty much does it for you. And this is why I love Oniric. So let's use this one. And let me increase the size of the brush by using the right bracket key just so that you can see the brush. So it creates all these different little concentric circles and ovular shapes, and they're not completely 100% painted in with whatever color you choose. There's a little bit of variance to it so that you get a little bit of a different depth. So I'm going to go a couple steps back in my history. Whoops, let's fill this with black. I went too far backward. Now I'm going to decrease the size of the brush just a little bit because as we start adding the motion blur, I don't want to go outside the canvas itself. So I'm going to stamp the scene like 3 times just so that we get enough of the buildup so you'll be able to see this for the purposes of video. Now, this is the way I used to add light streaks and colors and glows to scenes using brushes and my custom brushes and so forth in the past. I'm going to duplicate this layer 3 times by hitting Control or Command and the letter J. So 1, 2, and 3. Now I have 4 copies of this brush. The topmost layer, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. And I'm going to set the distance to 2000 pixels, which is the max distance. And already we can start to see the overall shape that this is going to take. So then let's come to the next layer in the layer stack from the top, and we'll come to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, and we're going to this time do 1500 pixels and hit enter. Then we'll go to the third one in the layer stack, Filter, Blur. I bet you can never guess we're going to go to Motion Blur, but this time we're going to do what? 1000, which is my goal of subscribers. So you should consider subscribing to the channel. And then I'm going to hit OK. So now we have 3 of these that I've had a motion blur. The fourth one, the original one, has the original stamp of the brush intact. So with this one, I'm going to come down to the FX tab here, and I'm going to do an outer glow. And the outer glow, the blue, let's not do blue, let's do orange, because Savannah has an orange gel on either side of her body, and this is where we'll add the streak to it. So I'm going to choose this color of orange. The blend mode is set to normal. This is the color, and then the size will vary just depending upon what we want to see in the overall effect itself. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now I'm going to right click the layer that we just put the glow onto, and I'm going to copy layer style. So let me do that again. Right click, it's right there, copy layer style, which means it's going to copy any of the effects, anything that we've added on top of to this layer utilizing the FX tab. Then I'm going to select all 3 of these layers at once and then right click one of them and say paste layer style. So now the outer glow has been pasted to each one of them. So I'm going to come to the top one, double click the word outer glow, and I'm going to bring the size out a lot, as big as I can get it to get an overall just kind of different effect. We could even work with the spread if we wanted to, but sometimes you get a really weird result. So once I hit OK, I'm going to come to the outer glow of the next one. This size is at 65 pixels. Let's bring it down just a little bit. And then let's go to the third one. And the third one, let's bring it down even more to like, 20-ish. 18 sounds good to me. And then the fourth one, the very first one we made, is at 65 pixels. I'm going to bring this one down to a very small number, like 10. 10 sounds good. So now on this original layer, the one that we stamped that has had nothing done to it, what I want to do is come up to Filter, Blur, and not Motion Blur. Don't get ahead of the game. Not Motion Blur. We're going to go to Gaussian Blur. And Gaussian Blur is going to push it out and just kind of blur those original circles. Now, this is to taste. This is to what you want. If you want to see some of the original circles, just reduce the overall glow. So when I used to make like laser effects and so forth coming out of like starships and laser guns and all that kind of stuff, don't judge me. I would leave the circles a little bit intact because it kind of felt like, they were like energy pellets coming out of the gun, pew, pew, right? But let's go ahead and increase it for purposes of today. So I'm going to just increase, let's go up to like, visually looking at it, I think that looks pretty good at 84.1. That's what I was thinking, 84.1. So once we've done that, there we go. That's the light streak that I would create. Now I would do a couple more things to it. So I would come to the top of the layer stack. I would make a new blank layer. I would return to my brushes and I would go to a soft round brush. Just FYI, this soft round brush is not included in the pack. This is just the standard first soft round brush that is populated as the default brush in Photoshop. I just put it into the group to make it easy so I don't have to scroll over the place. So on this top layer, what I would do is change the flow of my brush to like 5%. By hitting Shift 0 and 5, I would be painting with white, and I would just simply start like clicking just a little and paint a little bit of white around in a couple of different areas just to give it kind of a faux little glow. And then I would sample the orange, and it's this kind of ugly orange. So let's go to maybe something a little bit more rich in tone. And I would do the same thing again, and I would start stamping it around like that, and then maybe over here a little bit, and like, yeah. And then I would make a levels adjustment layer at the top of the whole thing. And then I would start increasing the overall light luminosity, which is really making it glow and stand out and give it all those kinds of effects. And then once I was done with this, at the very top layer, I would hit Control, Alt, Shift, and E, or Command, Option, Shift, and E for everything, which makes a composite layer, including the black layer underneath. Now I can put all of these layers except the composite layer I just made. So I'm clicking the levels adjustment layer, scrolling down, holding shift, and clicking all of these new layers that we just made, and I'm going to hit Control or Command and the letter G for group. And now they're in a group, and I can turn it off. Then on this composite layer that I just made, I'm going to change the blending mode to screen, which tells Photoshop to ignore the color black. Now we can see our fancy little light flare. And I would move it around, and I would put it like, you know, at the edge of Savannah's shoulder, and then decrease the overall size of it and be like, look at what I have wrought in the Photoshops, this beautiful light flare using my custom brush. And it's all lovely, and it's great, and it's fancy. So that's how I used to do this. And this would be the same methodology of what you would do for any of the light flare brushes themselves. Before we go to Oniric, let's show the backgrounds and how you would use those, the glow auras. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to delete that and the group, and I'm going to make two new blank layers. Layer number 1, we're going to fill with the color black by hitting Alt or Option and the backspace key. Then come to layer 2, hit B for brush. Let's come back to the folder, and let's do a triangle. Let's do this one. There we go. So I'm going to be painting with white. I'm going to increase the size of my brush. Let's change my flow back to 100%. Stamp once. Let's do that again. Let's stamp twice, 3 times, just so we can make sure we can see it for the video. So once that's been done, I would duplicate this twice. On the original layer number 2, I would add the outer glow. And let's do orange, and I would start increasing the size until I can kind of pseudo see it, and it looks kind of neat. Then I would come to layer number 2, the second one that I made, and I would go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I would give it a general blur, so to speak, and then that looks pretty good. Then I would do an outer glow on that one. And the orange is fine, but the orange, I'm going to lower the opacity of it because I just want that general color shift a little bit. If we increase the opacity, we got to increase like the size of it, and you start getting that outer glow, but it's difficult to see it. So then sometimes I would do a color overlay to try to make it white and all these other little different special effects and so forth. But ultimately, most of the time it just worked well if I reduced the overall opacity of it. Then I would make that blank layer again. Let's come up to our soft round brush. And then on this blank layer, let's sample some orange and add more tone to it because that just looks awful. And then change the flow of the brush to like 3% this time. And I would like stamp the corners here and make it look like it's glowing on all 3 points, like it's some special effect symbol from the movie Stargate. And I would put it into my composites and be proud of what I had wrought. And then of course do the same thing. I would make the composite layer of it and then change the blending mode to screen. And that's how I would add this effect. So let me show you the Oniric way. Spoilers, it's so much better. It's so much better. So I'm going to make 2 blank layers as we did before. I'm going to fill layer number 1 with the color black by hitting Alt, Option, and backspace, and then I would come to layer number 2. B for brush. Let's make the triangle. We'll start with that. So let's use this one. And I'm going to switch my foreground color to white, change my flow to 100%, and then increase the brush. I'm going to stamp it 3 times so we see it, and there it is. Now, I'm going to click Generate on Oniric, and it's going to take us into the program. If you've never seen Oniric before, sometimes it can take just a little bit of time to process because it's doing a lot under the hood to be able to create this effect. We just saw all the different layers and all the crap that I had to go through to create the original glow effect in Photoshop. You're seeing it now with Oniric. So Oniric's doing all of that under the hood, and it does it very, very well. So there are 2 different versions of Oniric, or 2 different effects of Oniric. There's diffuse and then the streaks. We're going to start with diffuse. Right now, Oniric needs to see light data in the image. If we click X-ray here, anything in green is what it sees. So it's pretty much seeing the entire triangle, which is great. So now on the default settings of intensity of 100, radius 20, and threshold at 0.25, and exposure of 0, it's giving it a glow, but it's a white glow. So if we click colorize, we can choose a color and it activates the hue spectrum. Look at that, just by itself. It looks amazing. It looks so much better than the way I used to do it in the past. I used to make like two versions of it, and I would do one that was white on top of the one that was filled with color and a glow and whatever, and it would take me eons to do this. And this little program with a couple of clicks of a button, voila, makes it, and it's beautiful. So we can increase the overall exposure, and again, it's generating and changing the effect, so we get this wonderful effect. Now, if you see this on the screen, hopefully you do, because this is 1080p HD YouTube, there's a lot of banding that we can see in the color, where we can see concentric lines coming out in the glow. That is because when Oniric goes into the generator, it converts the entire image, or whatever you're pushing through Oniric, to 8-bit. From 16-bit. If you don't know the difference between 8-bit and 16-bit, that's totally fine. Look at the videos above. It'll take you to the retouching series on my channel explaining Adobe Camera Raw and why I work in 16-bit only. I will not work in 8-bit. So 8-bit just doesn't allow Photoshop to perceive all the colors and information in the image, so therefore you get these concentric lines coming out. Do not fret, because once Oniric is done, once you've set up everything and it generates the glow, it will convert it to 16-bit and all of that will go away. So we have our glow. Everything looks lovely. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now I've got to name it, so we can call this one Aura 1 and then hit save. And now it's going to generate the different effects. This can take some time, depending upon the speed of your computer and depending on how much you've taxed your overall system. If you've been using Photoshop for a while and the cache is filled with a lot of information and all that kind of stuff, Photoshop can lag, and Oniric is a plugin for Photoshop. It's not a separate third-party program outside of Photoshop. And there is our beautiful background glow. All one layer that's been now produced to a smart object with a layer mask to the blending mode of screen. I love Oniric. I love it. And the creator of Oniric, Mario Overa, is an amazing artist. He's an amazing young man. And young man. I just literally turned into Clint Eastwood drinking coffee on the front porch. I'm a meme right in front of your eyes. Kids today not knowing what Buffalo Wild Wings is. So anyway, there's the background element. I love Oniric. It's fantastic. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful program. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And let's go ahead and delete this blank layer. Let's make a new blank layer. Let's go to the light streaks and let's choose, let's just use the one that we use, but let's use this one. It's got less dots out on the outside. And so again, what I want to do this time is I'm going to turn off my black layer and I'm going to try to paint where I want the actual streak to take place on Savannah's arm. So I'm gonna stamp it right there like 3 times just to make sure the circles get into play. You know what? No, I forgot. I don't need to do that because Oniric does a way better job than I can do with Photoshop. So let's click once. There we go. We've got our circles. And just for giggles, and this is a little side note, little side tip if you don't know how to do this, I'm going to actually warp this so I can contour the streak just a little bit to fit her overall arm. So I'm going to come up to Edit, Transform, and then Warp. And now I can use these little dots. Let's zoom in just a little bit more. And these are control points so that I can kind of just contort it a little bit and move it to fit Savannah's arm just a little bit better in that curvature. Let's grab this base and move it over just a little bit more. Let's grab these other control points. There we go. And get it so that it's just contorted just a tad. It's curved just a little bit. Hit enter to accept the transformation. And there it is. I'm going to go back to the normal round brush so we aren't distracted by my custom brush. Now, zoom out a little bit. I'm going to turn on the black layer. This is important. Turn on that black layer. If you have Oniric and you use Oniric, then let me learn you something big. When you have that black layer beneath it, you're able to see the effect a little bit more inside of Oniric. It's a great way to do this. And by the way, I was introduced to that idea by Dustin Volkema, who is a brilliant Photoshop artist, a brilliant CG artist, a wonderful human being. He was an original beta tester for Oniric. He's a great, wonderful human being. Check out his YouTube channel. There is a link to his channel in the description below. He's got great tutorials on Oniric and other wonderful things for the Photoshops. So I'm going to click Generate. And now, since the only thing Oniric can see is my custom brush, that's what it's going to take the effect on top of. So this time, instead of doing diffuse, which is essentially the outer glow, let's zoom in just a little bit, I'm going to go to light streaks or streaks, and it's going to set up all the parameters, and we can already see the streaks that it's creating. And I love me some Oniric. All right, so right now the streaks are set on an even horizontal plane. You can rotate the streaks here, and as you slide this around, you can change the degree increment so that we can go to that full 90 up and down. We can do it at an angle if you want to. And so again, with my custom brushes, you're able to get different particles in there, those different pieces of paint that Oniric will pick up and then be able to streak out. It sounds like it's streaking out, man. All right, so anyway, you got the streaks. It all looks fancy. And then this new slider that is new to version 1.1 of Oniric, you can start adding more detail to the streaks, and it's going to just pick up the information and refine them and change them around and so forth. You can leave them just as it is and get the original streaks from the brush itself. The more detail you add, the more it tends to minimize the streaks that it first created off of my custom brush, but you get opportunity, you get optimization, you get customization, you get your opportunities to do whatever you want to do with it. So you can increase the overall exposure of it, which is going to make them just stand out a little bit more and get more of that effect into it. We can click colorize here and then add some color to it. Let's go ahead and add that orange color. So let's go to like right about there and see what that looks like. Let's go just a little bit more toward that yellow, because the orange gel that was on Savannah's arms had a hint of yellow into it. So once that's done, I'm going to hit save. Let's give it a name. I'm just going to choose the number 1, whatever. And then once it's finished, it's again going to generate the entire effect depending upon the speed of your computer, the size of your cache, your system overload. If you've been watching YouTube all day or doing whatever you do on your computer, it can take some time. And that's not a reflection of Oniric. As we've seen, we need to generate a lot of different layers, a lot of different things inside of Photoshop to be able to create a vanilla glow. And this is like freaking Rocky Road with chicken wings on top and bacon, and it doesn't cause weight gain. So it's just that good. So anyway, we now have our effect. I'm going to turn off the original layer, the one that we painted white. So if we zoom in, we can still see that white dot right here. If I turn that off, now it's gone. And we have our nice signature pieces of glow, where again, on the streaks method in Oniric, it does add an outer glow to it, just like the diffuse method does. It's just not as prominent and doesn't push out as far because, you know, streaks is about streaks. So once that's complete, I'm going to turn off the black layer. And now let's hit Control or Command of the number 0 to zoom all the way back out. We have created some custom streaks that Oniric may or may not have picked up just by looking at the light data of the image of Savannah. So again, when you run the image through Oniric without the brushes, it's going to look for the light data in the scene. You have a threshold slider in Oniric that lets Oniric see more light into the scene. And you have varying results of both the diffuse and the light streaks themselves. But as an artist, this gives you the ability with these custom brushes to be able to paint in wherever you want some light streaks to take place. And so that's why these brushes that I made a long time ago are better utilized with Oniric than just with the standard method of how I know to produce the glow and so forth inside of Photoshop. So let's have some final thoughts and finish up this tutorial today and this first look at these brushes. I said in the video that debuted these brushes that I made these brushes because I was making Star Wars composites, and any character that has anything to do with the Empire, there's a custom set of lights. It's very stylized, like you can see on the Death Star and Star Destroyers and so forth. So I made the brushes to be able to replicate that. And then I started expanding the light flare brushes because I do a lot of image competition, and in an image comp, everything that you create has to be your own making. So I started making these brushes to add my own neon glows and so forth for cyberpunk work. And then when Oniric came along, it finally completed the equation for me to the fulfillment of the glows and the light and so forth that I have been seeking for a long time. Again, I've been using those various ways that were built into Photoshop to do that. And the unique algorithm that has been made for Oniric by Mario and Composite Nation it's just unbeatable. It's remarkable. It's amazing. And it's just something that I don't think I could ever top inside of Photoshop. And I have 20 years worth of knowledge of Photoshop. So I really implore you, check out compositenation.com. look at the tutorials, look at the information there about Oniric, and then I strongly urge you to purchase Oniric. It is a wonderful program that has so many different uses in all types of photography genres. If you want to pick up these brushes and be able to start adding some of your own light streaks and different effects, I would appreciate that, because I made these brushes a long time ago. They're on the website. It helps to support me as an artist, and I appreciate that support. So go to Reimagined.com, and in the shop, you'll find those brushes themselves. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me through the website, Reimagined.com. And like I said, there are more tutorials coming out very soon to the channel that will explore some more of the brushes and the overall creation of not just how I added the brushes and light streaks, but how I edited the image and so forth. Essentially a retouching series for some gelled glamour work. And here is a little sneak peek at the work that's coming up, so that you can see how to create this artwork from scratch, talking about the photography, talking about the retouching, using the brushes on Oniric, and so forth. So if you haven't subscribed, this is a reason to subscribe. These are reasons to subscribe, and continued education in Photoshop and in photography debuting each week. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching the video today. And until next time, I will see you out there in the world of Photoshop.